Haji Kareem was a 55-year-old man whose life had quietly slipped into a rhythm of solitude. A retired postmaster from a remote village in Sindh, he spent his days sipping chai under a neem tree and reciting prayers at the mosque. His hair, peppered with gray, matched the stillness in his eyes. His wife had passed away a decade ago, and though neighbors occasionally suggested a second marriage, Kareem had always declined, saying, "Love doesn't come twice for a man like me." Then came Rasheeda Bibi. She was 70, tall for her age, with silver hair braided tightly and eyes that still held fire. Twice widowed, childless, and living alone in a mud house on the outskirts, Rasheeda was seen by many as an odd relic of the past, respected but distant. She spoke rarely, laughed even less, but every Friday, she lit incense at the village shrine, where she prayed longer than anyone else. It was here that their paths crossed. One evening, after the prayers, Kareem offered her a cup of tea from his thermos. She accepted with a slight nod, her hands trembling slightly as she took the cup. They spoke, first of weather, then of memory, then of the loneliness that crept in like winter fog. What started as a rare exchange grew into routine. Rasheeda, despite her age, spoke of dreams. Kareem, surprised at his own restlessness, found himself looking forward to those brief conversations. In a society where youth is celebrated and old age discarded, their bond was mocked. "He must want her land," some whispered. "She bewitched him," others said. But Kareem, in a moment of clarity, or madness, asked her to marry him. Rasheeda didn't laugh. She looked him in the eye and asked, "Do you want a wife, or do you want company?" He replied, "I want truth. And I see it only when I'm with you." They were married within a week. No ceremony, no drums, just a quiet nikah witnessed by two elders and Allah. The village exploded with gossip. Children giggled in alleys, elders shook their heads, and even Kareem's younger cousin Shahbaz warned, "You'll become a joke." But Kareem didn't care. Rasheeda moved in. She brought with her silence, warmth, and a strange peace that settled over Kareem's life like early morning dew. The house no longer echoed. Meals were shared. Prayers were joined. Still, beneath the serenity, something stirred. Rasheeda would wake at night, standing at the window, whispering things Kareem couldn't hear. He never asked. And perhaps that was the first mistake. Because love that begins in defiance of the world rarely goes unnoticed. And the world always waits to strike back. Their marriage, once seen as an act of desperation or madness, slowly began to resemble something sacred. Kareem, once worn down by routine, now walked with a purpose. Rasheeda, long dismissed as an aging widow, now glowed with unexpected youth. Their bond, though unusual, grew stronger with each quiet morning and every shared prayer mat. Then came the miracle. One humid summer evening, Rasheeda fainted while sweeping the courtyard. Kareem rushed her to the town clinic, assuming it was a heat stroke or weakness. But the doctor's expression shifted from casual to stunned as he glanced at the test results. "She's pregnant," he whispered, as if the walls might collapse at the sound. Kareem blinked. "That's not possible. She's 70. The doctor nodded slowly. "I know. And yet here we are." News spread like wildfire. Some called it a sign from God. Others branded it blasphemy. Tongues wagged, speculation bloomed, and suddenly, the old couple was the center of a storm neither of them had summoned. Months later, Rasheeda gave birth to a healthy boy. The villagers gathered outside their home, some to congratulate, others to gawk. Kareem named the child Imran, meaning prosperity, and held him close with trembling hands. For the first time in years he cried. But not everyone was joyful. Shahbaz, Kareem's cousin, watched from a distance, his arms folded tightly. Once positioned to inherit Kareem's modest land and property, he now saw his future slipping away, first to Rasheeda, and now to a child born from what he considered a lie. "They've tricked everyone," he murmured to his wife. "That child isn't his. That woman, she's dangerous." Over the next few years, 2 more children were born, both daughters. The house that had once echoed with silence now rang with laughter and the clatter of small feet. Kareem, now a father of 3, was transformed. He built a swing in the yard. He planted fruit trees. He prayed harder and smiled more. But with each new joy, the village grew more uneasy. Shahbaz began to whisper in corners. He visited the local imam, the land records office, and Kareem's old friends. "She's using jadoo," he insisted. "No 70-year-old woman gives birth. He's under her spell." Soon, Kareem's own mind began to wobble beneath the weight of suspicion. He caught himself staring at Rasheeda, questioning her midnight prayers, her herbal teas, her unread books. He said nothing, but his silence was different now, colder, heavier. Rasheeda felt it, the shift, the distance creeping in like winter fog. One night, she asked gently, "Do you still believe in us?" Kareem looked away and muttered, "I believe what I see." She smiled sadly, then said, "Then look closer, Kareem, or you'll miss everything that matters." But Kareem wasn't looking closer. He was already drifting away. And Shahbaz, lurking in the shadows, was waiting to strike. Kareem no longer sat beside Rasheeda during evening prayers. He'd begun praying alone at the mosque, citing community obligations, though Rasheeda knew better. There was a chill in his voice, a hesitation in his hands when he touched her shoulder. The warmth they had built, brick by brick, now showed signs of quiet collapse. And Shahbaz, patient, cunning, fed that collapse like fire to dry wood. "Heard anything from your friend in the city?" Shahbaz asked one day, peeling sugarcane. "Doctors talk these days. Cases like hers, never heard of them before. Not natural, is it?" Kareem didn't respond, but the words followed him like shadows. Soon after, he started locking away documents. He questioned Rasheeda's use of herbs, her old books, even her whispered prayers at dawn. Once, he found her weeping softly beside their sleeping daughter. Instead of comforting her, he stood in the doorway and asked, "Why do you cry in the dark?" Rasheeda turned, her voice tired. "Because in the light, I have to be strong." The emotional divide grew. Kareem became colder, detached. He stopped playing with the children. He spent long hours with Shahbaz, who continued whispering poison into his ear. Then came the blow. One morning, Rasheeda was handed a notice from the local court. Kareem had filed a legal petition, questioning the paternity of all 3 children. The words struck her like stones. Publicly, legally, brutally. He claimed he'd been deceived, that the children weren't his, that the marriage had been built on witchcraft and manipulation. Rasheeda stood frozen as villagers watched her read the paper. Some murmured, some pitted, but none intervened. That night, she confronted Kareem. Her voice didn't rise. Her hands didn't tremble. "You gave me your name," she said. "And now you take away your blood?" Kareem sat in silence. His face was hardened. "I want proof. I want to know the truth." Rasheeda took a deep breath. "Truth? The truth is in the sleepless nights I cradled your children, in the meals I cooked when your back ached, in the prayers I whispered for you, never against you." Kareem looked away. "You believe Shahbaz," she continued, "but you never asked me." Kareem finally stood, but not to comfort her. "The court will decide." The betrayal was complete. A man who once claimed love had now turned his back on it, not through anger, but suspicion. That night, Rasheeda didn't cry. She lit a single candle, placed it beside her children, and watched them sleep. She made a silent vow. If her love was now on trial, she would defend it with truth, not tears. And far from their home, Shahbaz smiled. The damage was done. But not every betrayal ends the way it begins. The courtroom was small, its walls stained with the scent of old paper and judgment. Kareem sat on one side, rigid, eyes lowered. Rasheeda stood tall across from him, her white dupatta wrapped tightly around her shoulders, as if shielding herself from a chill that came not from weather, but betrayal. DNA tests were submitted. Witnesses whispered. The judge, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, sifted through the papers with quiet deliberation. Weeks passed, and then the truth spoke. All three children, Imran, Amina, and Layla, were biologically Kareem's. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Kareem's hands trembled as he heard the ruling, not because he was shocked by the truth, but because deep down he had known it all along. Outside, reporters and neighbors swarmed. Rasheeda didn't pause to answer a single question. She walked past Kareem, children in hand, not once looking back. Pride held her chin high. Pain weighed in her steps. But her dignity remained untouched. Shahbaz, once full of swagger, was now exposed. The village, now humiliated by its own cruelty, turned on him. His own family rejected him. He was forced to leave the community he once poisoned. But Kareem's punishment was not public. It was private. His home, once filled with laughter, fell into silence again. The swing in the yard rusted. The fruit trees dried. His meals were solitary, and his prayers, once shared, were whispered to empty corners. One day, he received a letter. It was from Rasheeda. "You asked for truth, and truth came. But love, Kareem, does not return once it has been doubted. I forgive you. But forgiveness is not an invitation. My children and I walk forward, not with bitterness, but with memory. And may God teach you to never confuse silence for weakness again." He folded the letter and placed it in his shirt pocket. He never replied. Years passed. Rasheeda raised her children with care and wisdom. She taught them the value of respect, of faith, of standing firm in the face of betrayal. She never spoke ill of Kareem, but she never spoke of him much at all. When Imran turned 15, he stood before a village audience at a school event and said, "My mother taught me what strength looks like. And my father, he taught me the cost of losing it." Kareem sat at the back of the crowd, unrecognized, old, and thin. He watched his son speak. His eyes watered, but his heart remained heavy. Regret is the kind of weight that doesn't show, but it crushes all the same. And as the sky turned orange above the village rooftops, Kareem sat alone on a bench, Rasheeda's letter still folded in his pocket. Because sometimes the harshest punishment is remembering the love you didn't protect.